Okay. Good afternoon, because it is afternoon. It is Monday, December 26th, and it's about 4:14 in the afternoon. I normally go ahead and record in the mornings, but the place where I usually go on location, excuse me, is Lovebirds Cafe, and they're closed today, as being the unofficial Christmas day. So instead, I am coming to you on location in the parking lot of Linden Optometry. And what we had done last time was beginning the article from GQ magazine called Into the Storm. And so that's where we are going to pick up for right now. And so this is going to be, should be, I believe it's episode 13, and this will be part 2 of the storm. As El Faro and her wounded crew plowed toward Joaquin, the Manouche, about 200 miles away, was racing east in an attempt to outrun the storm. Both ships were now battling 20 and 30-foot seas, and on the Manouche, cargo had started to rock loose. The shifting weight caused the ship to list to port, so the crew filled a ballast tank and waded down on the starboard side. As they worked, a monster wave struck, knocking the cargo boom loose, swinging the giant cranes to the left side of the ship, compounding the list. The adjustments, the countermeasures, nothing seemed to work. The storm just kept up its assault. Quickly, the crew tried jettisoning cargo, tossing containers over in a desperate scramble to stabilize the ship. That's when the ship lost power. With the ship unable to navigate, the waves took over, turning the boat until she was broadside to the waves. Drifting powerless, the Manouche was now nature's punching bag. On board, they were running out of options. Night was descending, and there was nothing left to do but enact the terrible routines that every sailor dreads. A crew member sent a hurried email to the ship's agent in Miami and activated the emergency signal that provided would-be rescuers with the ship's location. Meanwhile, the captain authorized a distress call on the Inmarsat satellite network. Then he ordered the crew to prepare to abandon ship. Earlier that morning, Captain Davidson, perched on the bridge of El Faro, was looking at the same thing that eluded the Manouche. Looking for the same thing that eluded the Manouche, a break in the weather. Desperate to wiggle out of the storm, he found only rougher and rougher seas. The ship was taking a beating, and by 7 a.m. on Thursday, Davidson had lost his engines. He knew he needed help. Davidson grabbed the ship's satellite phone and punched in the number for an official from Tote Maritime. When there was no answer, he left a message. "We have a navigational incident," David said in a reassuringly calm voice. "I'll keep it short. A scuttle popped open on 2 deck, and we were having some free communication of water go down the 3-hold. Getting a pretty good list. I just want to contact you verbally here. Everybody's safe, but I want to talk to you." Then Davidson called Tote's 24-hour call center and spoke to an operator. "I have a marine emergency," Davidson said. "We have a hull breach. A scuttle blew open during a storm. We have water down a 3-hold with a heavy list. We've lost the main propulsion unit. The engineers cannot get it going." Before long, a message had been relayed to the Coast Guard. The ship was in trouble, the coasties were told, but not at risk of sinking. Tote Maritime, now in touch with the Coast Guard, mulled its options for its foundering ship and decided the best bet was to get Davidson to steer it into shallow waters. A course was plotted for some small islands near the Turks and Caicos. Then they called El Faro's satellite phone to pass the orders to Davidson. No luck. And so the Coast Guard waited. There was no distress call, no reason for worry, just yet. El Faro was a behemoth of a ship, more than capable of handling some waves. Plus, it's not uncommon for a vessel to lose communication in a storm. Often a Coast Guard helicopter can help solve the trouble by dropping some radios. They just have to locate the ship. As the coasties on Great Inagua watched Joaquin move in on Thursday afternoon, they knew that if any ships were still out at sea, chances were good they'd need help. They waited. Dense, rolling clouds the color of dread spit needles of rain, and the wind bent the scrubby palm trees nearly horizontal. At about 8 p.m., the base in Clearwater called with news of an emergency. The freighter Manouche, with a crew of 12, was going down. The 2 Good Samaritan ships were rushing to the scene, but the violent waves keeping them from offering any help. On the phone from Florida, Commander Scott Fye had a question. Could a copter squad from Great Inagua venture into the storm? As the rains lashed the hangar, McCarthy didn't hesitate. Absolutely, he said. Mustering his crew, McCarthy detailed what was happening out at sea, and Andrews, the flight mechanic, let the words he was hearing sink in. Abandoning ship. He took a deep breath. You've prepared for this 1,000 times, he told himself. He jogged over to the Jayhawk for a quick assessment. Inside, he eyed the big water pump the chopper carried to bail out sinking vessels. Wouldn't be needing that, he thought. The ship was already a goner. Taking it out would create room for people, if they could pull them out of the storm. In the hangar, Cornea changed into his bright orange neoprene wetsuit and strapped on his rescue swimmer's vest, 8 pounds of gear that included lights, a radio, and a knife. By now, the wind was blowing so ferociously outside that the men had to climb into the Jayhawk inside the hangar and employ a little tractor called a mule to tow the chopper out to the tarmac. Outside, the night was black, and McCarthy and Post, the 2 pilots, strapped on their night vision goggles. McCarthy may have been the senior aviator, but he asked Post to pilot the craft. Hoping this was going to become a rescue mission, he wanted to be free to supervise. Post toggled the ignition switch, and the rotor blades cranked to life, lifting them into the rain, dark, and wind. Against the blowing force of the storm, he maneuvered the chopper off the ground. Now, gaining speed, he pointed the aircraft south and watched as the scattering of lights along the island's coast disappeared. Nothing but an inky void in all directions. The rotors thudded, the radios crackled, and the fearsome wind pushed the Jayhawk forward, up, and to the side. On the deck of the Manouche, the crew, 12 mostly Haitian sailors in T-shirts and shorts, some in flip-flops, many barefoot, strapped on life vests as the ship's list grew worse. Somebody dragged out the 250-pound life raft, which, when dropped into the water, inflated to form a black hexagon with an orange tent canopy. As soon as it looked safe, the men jumped in after it and crawled inside. Now came a new and desperate challenge: waiting. As the waves crashed over them, the men huddled in their raft, clutching flashlights and hoping someone received their message. Tiny lights on their life preservers glowed in the dark. After about 30 minutes in the sky, the Jayhawk reached the Manouche's coordinates. Post piloted over the area in a wide, banking curve. Below, twinkling in the rain, was the spectral outline of a doomed freighter. All its lights were on, and it was listing heavily to port like a staggering, wounded beast. The helicopter zipped by in a sweeping circle, and when it came around a few minutes later, the decks were already underwater, glowing a dull amber. They made another orbit. This time the ship was gone. Only light was visible beneath the waves. The speed of the submersion shocked the chopper's crew. It was a massive ship, the human world's interface with the ocean, and it was so quickly overwhelmed by the waves. Cornea stared at the ghostly glow, and whatever enthusiasm he had for getting in the water now drained from him. Target located, Cornea announced over his radio as they made another sweep. He was aiming the helicopter's infrared camera off in the distance, where the raft bobbed in the waves. It was a mile or 2 from the ship. Post flew over the orange-tinted raft and then tried to steady the Jayhawk into a hover. But the wind was pushing him hard, and the rain and dark were messing with his equilibrium. Instead of looking out the windshield to get his bearings, he had to rely on the hover bars on the instrument panel that showed the craft's relationship to a fixed point. In the back, Andrews turned on the main searchlight, and as when flicking on a car's brights in the fog, the rain reflected the light right back into Post's eyes. They shut it off and relied on lights mounted to the underbelly of the helicopter to illuminate the raft below. With their eyes on the rescue target, the crew quickly discussed their options. They decided to lower Cornea down on a cable into the water, where he would be disconnected and swim to the raft. Then Andrews would use the hoist to lower the steel basket to the water, and Cornea would load the survivors in one at a time, so Andrews could winch them up to the Jayhawk. What sounds simple, though, rarely is. Cornea strapped on his swim helmet and buckled his vest. He put on his mask and fins. Then Andrews opened the door. A blast of wind rushed in as Cornea looked down at the chaotic waves 30 feet below. His stomach dropped. Rescue swimmers like Cornea are the Coast Guard's most elite operatives, and the path to becoming one is brutally difficult. Less than half of those who are tapped to try out make it through swimmer school, a gauntlet of harrowing simulations and near drownings. And all that effort prepares graduates physically and psychologically for this moment right here, a battle with the wind and the waves. The more I stand around, Cornea thought, the more nervous I'll get, so let's get moving. He gave a thumbs up to Andrews. "Swimmers going out cabin door," Andrews shouted into the radio. "Swimmers on the way down." The flight mechanic needed to be the pilot's eyes at this point. "Swimmers in the water. Swimmers away. Swimmers okay. Clear to move." "Roger," Post responded. To Cornea, the water felt reassuringly warm, but the ferocity of the waves caught him off guard. Still, he was now in his element. His apprehension lifted as he steadied himself against the waves. He was amazed at how fast the raft was moving as he swam after it. Catching up and grabbing hold, Cornea unzipped the curtain of the tent and peered inside. 12 faces stared back, immobile, the whites of the sailors' eyes visible in the dull glow of their lights. "Okay, who speaks English?" Cornea barked into the raft. The captain raised his hand. "Good," Cornea thought. "I have my translator." Next, Cornea asked if anyone was injured. The answer was no. Then he explained that he was going to get them all into that helicopter whooshing above, one at a time. "Any questions?" The captain wanted to know the status of their ship. "It's gone," Cornea told them. As the information was translated into Creole, shock flittered across their faces like an electric current. It was as if, bobbing alone out there in the storm, they only now were grasping the magnitude of their situation. And that's going to be the end of part 2 of Into the Storm from the, November 2016 issue of GQ. Let's see if we can get the author's name here. Let's see. Come on now. Should be here somewhere. Maybe on the next page. Here we go, by Tristram Corton. And pretty good story so far, pretty exciting. And we've got probably one more part to this story. So thank you for joining me for story time. This is Ron, and we'll see you again on the 28th, on Wednesday the 28th. And until then, have a great day.